So now, if I have a bunch of negative thoughts and I perpetuate them or I take them down rabbit holes and snowball them, imagine how that's affecting and infecting my thoughts, let alone my body, let alone my environment.
Hello and welcome to the Overflow podcast. This is a podcast on a mission to discover how you and I can live a life of abundance, full to overflowing. For season 4, Filip and I are talking with a mental health therapist to ask questions about anxiety and depression, how we can spot the signs, identify the causes, and fight for an overflowing life. My name is Carl Lindsay, and this is episode 32. Wow, it has been a year since we launched this thing. Today is July 19, and we launched on July 20. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. For those of you who have listened to each episode throughout the last 4 seasons, we're really grateful for your support. And yeah, we really hope it's been helpful. We are on this journey together. And yeah, we'd love to hear more from you as well in the coming weeks as we plan this series on relationships coming up in season 5. Hit us up on Instagram at Choose to Overflow. Send us a message. What kind of things do you want us to talk about when we discuss overflowing relationships? Right now, we are in this season on mental health, and so we are talking about today's episode, the question of why. Why are we depressed? Last week, we looked at how to identify depression early, and now we're talking about the why. So Jamie's going to give us some of the reasons why we may be dealing with depression. And Filip actually also shares his own personal struggle with depression and how he came out of that about a decade ago. So if you're just joining us for the first time, I want to introduce Jamie to you. Jamie is a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Southern California. And yeah, she's just all about supporting you and her clients through their journeys toward healing emotionally, psychologically, as well as spiritually. So many of us have been told lies, and we've got these misbeliefs that are keeping us from living this overflowing life that we keep talking about. And so her goal and ours here is to help you leave those behind and live with peace and joy that's found in Christ. Again, this season I've been mentioning some resources that may be helpful for you as you fight for an overflowing life, fight for your mental health. Some of these resources include some things that were put together by our church on anxiety and depression and other mental health challenges. So they actually have a number of articles and information booklets available for free download, and you can access them in the show notes or just visit choosetooverflow.com/NAD. Also, we want to let you know about mhascreening.org, where you can take a mental health assessment, figure out the types of anxiety and depression you may be dealing with. Yeah, so that's mhascreening.org. And of course, depression is something that can lead to suicide. And so we know that this is a serious topic. We want to remind you of the national lifeline numbers in the US and Australia. If you're considering harming yourself, please reach out to your national suicide prevention line. The number to call in the United States is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. Australia, the number is 13 11 14. 13 11 14. So please look up your local phone number for other countries if you're not living in either of those two, and make it a priority to talk to someone. Okay, thanks again for being with us the last year. We've 32 episodes in. Now we're going to jump into this conversation that Filip Milosavljevic and I had with Jamie Stodola.
All right, we're back. Here we are in the season dealing with anxiety and depression. Last week we talked about what really is depression. Now let's talk about this idea of why we are depressed. So kind of dealing with some of the issues surrounding depression. We're here talking with Jamie Stodola, licensed marriage and family therapist who is dealing with all kinds of individuals. We're really grateful to have you on this show, Jamie. Why are we seeing depression on the rise in much younger generations, particularly children, teenagers, young adults? Why is there this cause of depression among such young kids? What's going on?
I would say it's because of electronics, social media, and the collapse of the family structure, family closeness, and family support.
What do you mean? Let's put a definition around the collapse of the family structure.
Well, it could be the actual like roles or lack of really doing what the role calls you to do as mom
Okay.
and dad.
Right.
It could also be the family
Single parent home.
Divorce,
home. Yes.
yeah, abuse even in there.
As well as the structure, the structure of how if the parents are doing what they're supposed to do. And so then that's why I included the closeness and the support. Because even at a young age, the electronics have become the babysitter.
Yeah.
So I think it really has a lot to do with electronics. And then the kids are isolating with their electronics. And often the parents are too.
Right. One kid's off on mum's phone, the other kid's on dad's phone. And yeah, just by themselves. Wow.
I read just recently an article where it was almost like there's more of a concern for parents in the addiction of electronics because of the neglect that then they pose on their children. It's like the kids are seeing their mom and dad on their phone or on their computer so much and they feel neglected.
Yeah.
You know, I've never thought about it like that because I normally think of it from a very different perspective as a youth pastor, young adult pastor. Hey, get off your phone, guys. But then it's like, whoa, wait a second. Your parents are struggling with this. And it makes sense because even I struggle with it. The connection to my devices and having to put them away and having almost sacred spaces where it's like, it's bedtime. I'm putting this away. And I'm not going to fall asleep with my phone. The amount of people that fall asleep with the phone is, I think, over 80% of individuals in the United States
I didn't know that
are
one.
falling asleep with a blue screen in front of them.
Wow.
It's like 85%, something like that.
And then, never mind the content, actually.
Right. Yeah.
That the enemy is so slyly imprinting in their mind.
Yeah.
Especially if they're watching something, because the flash of the screen and the changeover of the screen is essentially a type of like low level hypnotism.
Oh, sure.
And so whatever they're watching is just so easy, passively just sinking in. Yeah. It's dangerous. I mean, for no matter the age.
Yeah. So you're saying you're seeing this among younger generations because of these various things that are coming up. Okay.
Yeah. And going back to our, beginning of the season, we talked about in 2013, by 2013, it had doubled from like 90.
90, yeah.
And it was around 2010-ish that
the iPhone was introduced. Yeah.
I mean, there were other phones too, and there were like the BlackBerry.
What is that phone? What?
I was listening to a audiobook about the fall of the BlackBerry, but so that was more designed to be an office thing, and it was email purely. But then the iPhone comes in 2007, 2008, 2009, and just kept growing in popularity, and we got hooked.
And it's basically like being on your computer 24/7, or whenever you have your phone, it's like having your computer.
It's a little computer for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Jamie.
So, how do the narratives that we tell ourselves, how do they affect our mood? Because depression is mainly mood, isn't it?
Good question. Yes, it's a mood disorder. So we have approximately 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day.
Wow.
12,000
to 60,000.
And you can find a little different, people argue different numbers. And same with this percentage I'm going to give you. But the 80% of those thoughts, wherever you land that day, they claim that 80% of them are negative.
Wow.
Now, this is not necessarily like you might be thinking to yourself like, oh, that you're putting yourself down or something like that. It could be that too, that you're kind of like judging and criticizing. Why did I do that? Why didn't kind of this narrative in your head? And if you think about it, even when maybe you might do this even with your young kids, that when as you're training them, it's possible that your direction or redirection that you provide them is also negative.
Really?
Let me give you an
Yeah.
let me give you an example.
I
So
can give you many of how I do it every day.
but what I'm alluding to is that as children, we hear no a lot. No, or don't, or you can't.
Yeah.
Okay. So if one of your little ones is here by this ottoman and there's some, coasters and things there, and you don't want your child to touch it, you could say, no, don't.
Yeah, right.
Or no, you can't touch that. Okay.
So you're redirecting away with a negative.
Yes.
Right.
Now, what would be much better is telling that young brain, because actually our brains are kind of this young too, kind of this simple too, is saying, oh, this is not safe, or this is not healthy, or this is dangerous. Even better, this is like if it's a plug-in or something, this is dangerous. Here, let's play with this puzzle.
So are you saying that's good to do, to redirect like that, or that can also be detrimental?
No. You should redirect.
Okay,
So he's asking, about the narratives that
Okay.
we carry, because
Okay.
that influences our mood.
My mom does that all the time when she comes over with the kids. She's just like, because I catch myself saying no all the time, and she's always, oh, here's this book. Oh, here's this ball. Why don't we spend time sitting here instead?
What a good grandma.
Oh, she's a gem. She is a gem. I just think about myself as a parent when I compare myself to my mom. Like, I have so far to go. Yeah.
So you're saying so we have these 60,000 thoughts a day, 80% of them are negative. You're saying even if we're not talking about ourselves or thinking about ourselves, the negative thought is still harmful.
Yes. Well, anything that you might be thinking about could be negative. And this is why I think that prayer is so important. And what you had talked about, was it the last, our last episode, about your wife who determined going into work and coming out of work that she was going to focus on something that she was thankful for, gratitude.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Bible tells us to do this.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us to even keep track, to kind of essentially journal, so you can go back and dwell on what God has done for you.
Yeah.
And so we go carrying on about our day, and it's not just negative about us. It's negative, in how we say things and how we react, or even sometimes choose to respond to someone. So we don't think about it too often, about the fact that our thoughts create energy. If our thoughts can be redirected to essentially engage our mind, our brain in neuroplasticity, basically redirecting those thought paths in our brain.
Brain surgery.
It takes energy to do that. Okay? So now, if I have a bunch of negative thoughts and I perpetuate them, or I take them down rabbit holes and snowball them, imagine how that's affecting and infecting my thoughts, let alone my body, let alone my environment.
Your relationships with the people around you. Oh, totally. That makes sense.
And the enemy is really happy for this, because then we're spewing negativity all over the place.
I have to just take a moment just to say this, because I think it just hits too close to home for me in particular. I remember a season in my life where I was just looking negatively at my circumstances, in marriage. And it was early on. We were struggling to connect thoughtfully, wisely, with just compassion. We would have anger very easily, a lot of missed expectations. And I remember, this is the very first time it happened for me. Elena was crying in the bedroom, and she locks the door and she calls her dad.
Mm.
And I remember hearing her just say this, like, I can't do this anymore. He doesn't understand me. And it was somehow in that vein. And I'm knocking on the door. She's not opening the door. And I just kind of just sit down. I kind of almost collapse there in front of the door. And I'm crying myself, crying out to God. And I'm looking across the kitchen, and I'm like, I might as well just end it. I'm seeing the kitchen knives there. And it was because as I'm listening to you talk about this, I'm like, I had habituated this pattern in my head. This is awful. She's terrible. This marriage isn't working. Why did we do this? I made a mistake. This doesn't work. It was just this constant repetition of negativity. And it had habituated so much in my mind. And I remember when that thought first entered my brain, I was just like kind of like shocked, like, whoa, wait a second. Wow. But yeah, maybe I should, because it would just end things and it would be over. The pain would be done. And I think that's the hard thing with depression, because it's like you want to find the quickest way almost out of the pain. So if it's like self-medicating, or it's just kind of distracting yourself, or just whatever, and going to the furthest extreme of ending your life, that is the easiest way. And I remember, unfortunately, once that came in that moment, it came back easier to the thought of let's just end this. I should just end this. And
how long did that period last, that I should end this period?
it was probably a couple months. It was a couple months. And it wasn't until I remember I was in a summer session of one of my seminary classes that we were talking about spiritualism in the mission field, and in particular, like, that the devil is real. This is powerful stuff. We got to be careful in this. And is anyone struggling? And I confessed to my class, just like, hey, I feel a serious dark depression and oppression in my life with this. And my entire class circled me. And it was probably a group of 12 in that class. It felt like a safer space to be able to share. And the professor put his hand on me, and every single one of my peers prayed over me and just prayed that this would be broken in my life. This darkness would leave, that God would fill. And I kid you not, I never looked back as for suicide as an answer to my marital struggle in those first couple of years. So me just expressing it out loud was powerful.
Yes.
That was huge. I didn't say that to anybody. No way was I going to tell anyone. Here I'm preparing to be a pastor in seminary. The first years of marriage, I didn't want anyone to think anything less of me or Elaine and where we were. So that was huge. I am so grateful for that class. I faintly remember the professor's name, but it was a big day. So
do you think you could maybe share with or if you are able to reflect on, you didn't look back to suicide, but do you think you were still experiencing some of the symptoms, kind of the reverse of it coming? I'm the impression I'm getting is that you were coming out of it, that you had kind of cut off that part of the snake, and now you were trying to eliminate the other parts, rewire your thoughts. What kind of was that like for you, so that people can see that there's a process to it still?
I started a journal of all the things that I loved about my wife in that season.
Who gave you that idea?
Probably a therapist.
Yeah. Okay.
No, legitimately, I think it was. I reached out to my counseling professor after the class, and I said, would you be willing to sit down with Elaine and I And he individually sat down with me, individually sat down with her, and then both of us. And I started journaling just the things that I love about her. And I realized that really helped because I was, Jamie, as you said this, I'm going to steal this idea of brain surgery. I was literally reforming how I thought about my wife. And I was choosing different thoughts about my life and our future, the vision of where we would go, the blessing that God had called us into. It was really a big deal. But I'm going to tell you very honestly, it took a long time. It took a long time to still grow through that. And I'm so glad. Here we are 12 years later, married, 2 kids, the strongest we've ever been as a couple, you know, but it was those initial years of pain that I'm so glad we got through.
And so one thing to note is that it didn't, unless of course there was some initiating event, a crisis or a death or something, which we might talk about in other episodes perhaps, but it wasn't overnight that you were depressed.
No.
So it's very likely that it wouldn't be overnight that you would be, sunshine and roses. But you definitely, that was a step. Those were some distinct steps that helped you.
Oh yeah, definitely. So if you're wondering in your life right now, like, man, am I gonna make it through this? You absolutely can, and you will. And it does take a season, and it does take support.
And sharing.
And sharing.
You took that step to share, to speak it out loud.
Yes.
As we've talked about in some of our other episodes.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Phil. And in terms of the other aspects of our health, Jamie, do they deteriorate as well as a result of depression? Are there common struggles that people face?
Most definitely. For some people, it might be kind of right away and simultaneous with the onset and the, kind of the growing of the dark hole of depression. But some of those health struggles look like fluctuating weight, heart attacks, and blood vessel constriction and issues, increased pain sensitivity, lower interest in sex, and weakened immune system, especially this last year. That was, and digestive issues. These are some of the health issues that can come about with depression.
Wow.
There are more, right?
Of course,
headaches or other tension in the body, especially if you have anxiety along with it. But yeah, those are some of the common ones.
Well, that's good to note as a little thing to tuck away in your brain, just in case that's you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing again with us, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Wow, thanks so much for sharing with us again, Jamie. It's really good to hear a little bit more about depression and some of the reasons we can find ourselves in a depressed state. I want to thank Filip as well for sharing his story, I guess back 10 years ago or so, when he was really struggling in his relationship with his wife. I want to highlight, if that's you, if those kind of thoughts have been flowing through your head, we really want to encourage you to reach out, talk to people, talk to someone at your church, talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist, find a therapist who is able to walk with you through this challenge. And again, if you're thinking suicidal thoughts, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Line in Australia. That is 131114. That's 131114. And the number to call in the US is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. We're praying for you guys as listeners. We know that this is a big deal right now in the world, and that's why we're talking about it. We want to bring some awareness, bring some ideas of how we can step through this time. And yeah, we really hope these conversations have been helpful. Don't forget, we've got those free resources available from our church You can access them at the link in the description in the show notes or choosetooverflow.com/NAD. And if you've got any specific questions for Jamie, you can reach out to her, jamie.wellbeing@gmail.com. She offers remote sessions as well, so if you're looking for a therapist, check out the links in the show notes. And next week, we're going to be talking about how to overcome depression. We've talked about last week identifying depression and some reasons why we have it today. And so I really hope that next episode will be helpful for you as well. So yeah, please subscribe if you haven't already. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Our website too, choosetooverflow.com. Join us as we chase this overflowing life. Join us as we fight for the overflow with these mental health challenges. Find us on Instagram at choosetooverflow. Send us a message. We'd love to hear how these episodes and this season has been helpful and impactful in your own life. That's all for this week. Thanks so much again for listening. We hope you really choose to overflow this week. Let's chat again soon.